Greetings, everyone. I might be a couple of minutes early. In any case, this is going to be a presentation. Okay, I'm just hitting some of the technical challenges on the side here. Okay, anyway, this is going to be my presentation in regards to what we're offering in the area of demonic studies. This would be becoming eventually a demonic profiler. We have a online course, and the name of our seminary is St. Michael's Seminary of Assessment Science. I'm going to share with you a lot of the things that that you can expect when you join our program. It's a seminary online program that will cover areas in the realm of demonic profiling, and we'll go into investigations as well as assessments and things that may be extremely helpful, especially when you're profiling. I'm going to be covering the introduction of our program, like the 6 study research lessons, the student classifications based on their completion of each class, and it actually comes into, as we see it, as a level 1 through 6, and also the tuition per class. And so before we do any of that, I must say that this program will be extremely effective based on your inner belief system. You have to believe that we are at a war. This war is a war of good versus evil. And by acknowledging that, you become part of this whole spiritual scenario in the physical world. So a lot of what I'm going to say, you may or may not accept. However, if you have an open mind and you really truly want to get involved in this type of scenario where you are the actual demonic profiler, then you might really want to listen and learn as much as you can. Each lesson will be viewed in the topic, which is basically demonic profiling, assessment process, pre-site investigation, first contact, interview, demonic investigation, and assessment reports. So each of those are 6 classes, and you can take those classes as you feel you are ready to before you go on to the next. It's on your own pace. In other words, you just study as much and do as much research as you can on the topic, and then you answer the questions, and at that point you submit it to directly to my office, and we will review your answers, and then we follow up with a video conversation as we go through your answers, and then we make a determination as to whether or not you're able to go to the next level. And each level you receive a certificate of completion. Of course, the ultimate goal is to receive all 6 certificates. But the first certificate itself will put you in a level 1, which means that you are trained, at least to a certain degree, in regards to how to profile something that is highly unusual, something that is real, and something that that you have inside knowledge to, where you can actually profile the demonic behavior based on the individual that's before you. Before I do anything else, because of the reality of the war that we have between good versus evil, and the demonic evil spirits are all around us, I always like to open up with a prayer. And the prayer, of course, is going to be the St. Michael's prayer. So if you're familiar with it, you could pray along, or if you are not familiar with it, listen to the words, and then look it up online. It's called the St. Michael's prayer. We'll start right now. St. Michael the Archangel, defend us in battle. be our defense against the wickedness and snares of the devil. May God rebuke him, we humbly pray. And do thou, O Prince of the heavenly hosts, by the power of God, thrust into hell Satan and all other evil spirits who prowl about the world for the ruins of souls. Amen. This is a prayer that we say before we actually do an actual assessment on anything in regards to relating to demonic issues. Anything from demonic infestation to demonic oppression to demonic possession. And we'll go into that in detail. I'd like you to maybe think of some things you may want to ask me in regards to these things, but there is one rule that I have to insist on. We will discuss demonic behavior, but we cannot identify the demonic by name, and there's a reason for that. We don't want to give credit where credit is not due in regards to the demonic entities. They are real, they're all around us, and they're even joining us in this class, presentation as you will. So anything we say and do, okay, we are going to have and receive impressions in our minds. And that is that a demonic entity can actually enter your subconscious. And we refer to it as a demonic oppression, where the demonic entity will actually place a seed in your mind, and you'll think that it's something that you never notice, and you just think that it's something natural that's happening in your own behavior. And certain things may happen, which is all negative. That is, negative influences may become part of your reality, and people will see you as such. So to prevent that from happening, I want to give you more information about demonic oppression. And then with that in hand, I like to have you use it as a defense mechanism, to know that it's there, it's real, and what we're discussing is highly, not only suggestible, but very highly devastating to your very being. Once you realize that the things that we're talking about are real, then you will also realize that things happen for a reason, and there's always a cause and effect. So in this particular scenario, we're going to talk about things that are unseen, but we have enough evidence to classify the behavior and place it in a certain state. And so we can understand and study and then recognize it when we see it again. It's all part of the whole profiling process, if you will. So hopefully we'll get that together there. Now I'm doing this this is the first time we're actually presenting our seminary programs on Facebook Live. So I'm still kind of like, bumbling around as to how to do this in the proper fashion. I did want to have you submit your questions, and of course I will answer your questions. But we have to understand and agree that we will not talk about the actual demonic name, but we can talk about the behavior. And on that, I think we will just simply take it from there. The Order of Exorcists has been around and incorporated and established in 1982. I created a very helpful instrument called the assessment process. And what this is basically is a system where we could actually talk to the victim and find out exactly what their experiences have been, past and present. And based on our observation and the questions that we direct to them, we can make an impression as to what is actually going on and what we're actually dealing with. Understand, there's a lot of deception out there. There are a lot of people that will claim to have symptoms of some type of demonic issue. We don't really know unless we take a complete focus on the individual surroundings, and their past and present. And a lot of this information can be collected, of course, online, but also we will need physical evidence not only videos, but we also need the psychological and physical report that should be submitted with the assessment report, which is also an extremely important issue. The assessments that we go through have basically three major issues. We talk about the mental changes of the victim. Now understand too that any changes that the victim may have can also be mimicked by intention, not by any demonic influence. If the individual wants to receive some type of intention for some reason, maybe the person has some form of chemical imbalance or some type of psychosis that has not been diagnosed or has been, whatever the case is, we have to look at it really carefully and study their behavior, study their mannerisms, and go through a questionnaire, as I said, which I designed many years ago. The mental changes in the affected person can not only affect the individual who is the victim, but also all the family members. So this might be broad. This might be a real broad field here, especially when you're investigating an individual and their household. The second section of our assessment is the physical changes that are actually affecting the individual. The physical changes could be health issues, could be a history of other things, and then also borderlines and mental stability as well. The third part of our assessment is the outward manifestations that the individual is actually experiencing. And of course the investigator or the demonic profiler, when he's doing his assessment and analyzing, he's looking at and looking for physical manifestations that may take place. This could be anything from supernatural events like the levitation of things in the room, or even things that are moving, or maybe the smells and other things that are that you wouldn't consider normal. This is a very interesting area of investigation. But as a demonic profiler, you would actually be focusing in on the individual. The individual who has made the request for assistance in this area. You would be looking at and examining the behavior of the individual. That goes for his physical expressions, anything you can see physically, the skin tone, accents, something unusual about the individual. You just focus in on these areas, and then you would have to make some kind of final assessment as to what you're actually looking at, and what you could actually prove that to be real. Again, all of this stuff is it would make a lot more sense to you if you have a deep level of understanding, and your inner belief system is intact in regards to what we're referring to when we talk about spiritual things. This program is it's on a self-individual, a self-pace, if you will, which you could proceed from lesson to lesson. The first lessons that we always talk about and generalize is the demonic profiling class. And this class, the length of the class, it could take you maybe a week to complete, to a month or whatever, because it's totally up to you in regards to what pace you want to study and do your research and then submit your answers. Everything is done done online. We examine your test scores, we examine your answers, we examine everything that you submit to us, and then we contact you for a visual review. And this is where you would interact with me, and I, in essence, will give you, and I will mentor you from the beginning to the end, and that's like an ongoing support. So that's something that you might want to consider. I am like maybe 15 minutes in this presentation, and I'm still wondering when and if I'm going to have any questions, or anyone has any questions in this area. Don't mind me. I'm going through this, And as I said, this is my first time. So I'm watching and looking at the individuals who are actually viewing this with 8 comments. So I'm going to go to that. And I'm going to see if I could bring that up. So hold on 1 second. Okay, I see some people right here. Okay, there we go. Hey Gil, how you doing? And we have Leslie, and we have, of course, one of my favorite demonic investigators, B.E. Taylor. How you doing, my friend? This is, as I said, this is my first time making this presentation, so if I'm fumbling a little bit, understand that it's not going to be perfect, but at least if I could get the information out, and you could maybe give me some of your questions, I'll answer them. And so let's see. Okay, guys. I told you we were going to talk about the behavior of demons, and what I have published is an assortment of personal personalities that each demonic entity might demonstrate and show. And I might go through that list right now. Since we're not going to actually identify by name the demon, we are going to talk about its behavior and how it's classified as. The very first personality of a demonic entity that has possessed an individual would be the spirit of fear. That's very strong. Fear is quite obviously a very negative thing that could break an individual, not only mentally but physically. The second one is the spirit of death. And by the way, all of these identities are mentioned in the scriptures. Everything that we do is inspired by the scriptures, by the Bible. So this is not just me giving you my information, but this is actually quoted in Scripture. The spirit of fear, for example, is in 2 Timothy 1:7. And then it goes on, the spirit of lust/bondage is also the third type of personality that could be physically manifested in an individual that is possessed by a demon. The fourth spirit would be the spirit of addiction. And we know how destructive addiction could be. Anything from drugs to self-mutilation, from anything that you feel compelled to do on an ongoing basis. Of course, there's the spirit of pride. And this is another very negative. Now, each of these symbols or personalities are tied to a demon. And each demon, if you look at it from a military perspective, in the military you have generals, and then you have the upper officers, the colonels, the majors, the captains, and then you have the foot soldiers. If you look at it this way, all the demonic angels have different positions, and different ranks, if you will. You have some that are commanders. You have some that are foot soldiers. You have some that take the instruction directly from Satan, and that is to carry out a mission for destruction. And that is, when I say destruction, I mean the individual who's involved and the individual who is being attacked. So that's extremely very important. There's also a spirit that is mentioned in Acts 16:6. It's a python. The spirit of python. A python is a snake, but it's also an evil symbol and is identified by certain physical characteristics that can be seen in a person that is possessed. There have been cases where the individual, and whether you, again, depending on your level of belief and what you're willing to accept, true cases of individuals who have actually been possessed by a demonic entity, and their entire physical being was altered and appeared to be looking very much as a reptile, snake actually, and that goes for the texture of the skin, the entire shape of the face, the body, and so on. It actually looks like a big python, if you will, and it's a very real thing. Again, many people find a lot of things that I say pretty hard to believe because they haven't experienced what we've experienced. The people who are in the ministry of exorcism have experienced many things that are totally and will never be spoken, at least not in an open forum, because it's too strange, it's too bizarre. I mean, people would look at them and say, you know what, there's something strange about that person. Whether it's your pastor or your bishop or whatever, no matter what title you hold in your church, if you reveal some of these facts to the laity, they will look at you and think you're a rocker. Mainly because these things are unbelievable. There are certain things that you'll never ever even expect to see, such as people going through walls physically, or people levitating and reaching the ceiling. These things actually happen. A physical transformation of the person's appearance. The hair color will change, eye color will change. Their features would change. There's even, and I wrote about this one case where there was an individual who actually was able to change their gender from male to female, and also height, increased at least 4 or 5 inches tall, as a result of going through this transformation. Again, this was part of the reality of the personality of the demon. This was his form. This is what he wanted to create in terms of visual effect. The more people he could distract, the better it is for him, because then he could continue to exist in that poor individual. The individual is going through so much pain, so much torment, and of course is not even conscious of the fact, because they're like sleeping in the back seat of a car, and the person driving would be the demonic entity, and the demonic entity would be displaying all of its physical manifestations through the person that they are possessing. Very scary. I had a couple of questions that have come up about individuals who first encounter these supernatural events. What actually, how is it actually perceived, and what kind of reaction they have? Many of the people, believe it or not, and including some clergy for the very first time, when they see something that's so supernatural, so unexpected, they physically, without thinking, will just leave the room, run out of the room even. We've had some lead exorcists, clergy members, who have, for the very first time, witnessed a full, valid, demonic possession. And as a result, they experienced things that they weren't expecting. Certain things would happen where they would, the victim would regurgitate physical things. In some cases, glass, nails, solid objects would come out of nowhere, and they would just come out from their nostrils, their mouth, and all the other various areas. And it's very disturbing to see it, especially when it's real life, and this is not a put together for entertainment purposes, like a movie or something. This is a real reality. And our reality, of course, is understanding that we are constantly around the spiritual things in this world. We coexist with them, or should I say they coexist with us. Either way, they're all around us. The spiritual entities are all around us. I like to think that we have, and I know we have, good spirits that are around us. Some of us believe that they are our guardian angels. But there are also the dark side. There's also the demonic. Demons, as you know or should know, are fallen angels. They were thrusted out of heaven with Lucifer. And as a result, 1/3 of the angels went with Lucifer as they were thrown out of heaven. And these fallen angels are referred to as demons. And these demons have an assigned mission, and that is to destroy God's creation. They want to make everything in your life
become chaos, where you have no logic, no reasoning whatsoever in terms of what is good, and you start demonstrating everything that's bad, that's negative, and that's really where these bad characters come into play, serial killers and such. So these are things to be aware of. A demonic profiler is a person that is there and who can actually identify the personality of the entity. In an actual ritual of exorcism, it's important that the exorcist identify the demon by name. That is the only time the name is actually said out loud. That is, the person who's possessed will, after a time, will actually confess as to who it is. If it's many demons, which it could be a multitude of demons in that one person, then they would identify themselves one at a time as well. And when that happens, you would have to do a ritual, no doubt, multiple times to make sure that every demon has been exorcised out of that individual. So it could be a very long process. The demonic profiler will look at the behavior of the individual and study the movements, study the psychological profile, study the physical profile of the individual, and then we'll make an assessment as to what type of demon we are dealing with. Are we dealing with a demon that is just displaying what would be some form of addiction, maybe some form of bondage, maybe lust? All these things can be actually read physically, and as you see them, you would put your total focus on the individual, and then you would start making notations. And now you're looking at the personality. You're not looking for the name per se. You're looking for the personality. Once you have the personality and you know exactly what you're really dealing with and what classification it goes that you place it in, then the exorcist would do his ritual, and then he will be looking for the name based on the behavior and the information that was given to him by the demonic profiler. Demonic profiler can be clergy or it can be a lady, but he has to be somebody who is committed, somebody who is definitely called by God to do just this, because they have to prepare themselves for the unexpected. Because when they see something and it's real, up close and real, then obviously it's going to have to be something they can deal with mentally, and they have to fall on their faith and understand that they're protected. The St. Michael prayer that we've done earlier is the kind of prayer that you want to say before and after such sessions. When I say sessions, I mean while you're examining as a demonic profile, you're examining the individual, the host, the human body, you're looking for physical manifestations that are taking place coming from within that person. At that point, you can isolate the behavior, and then you can classify it accordingly. All these things take time, and of course, your dedication is important. And if you're a laity, okay, your level of faith is extremely important, because this is the perfect opportunity to be a victim of demonic oppression. You may be in there to actually profile a victim, and then it turns around and bites you where the sun never shines. That is, that you become a victim yourself as part of a demonic oppression, which is very highly contagious. And as a result, you have to be aware and make sure that your spiritual defenses are as strong as your physical senses. Okay, and when you walk into a situation like that, you have to make sure that you are ready to encounter anything and everything. And every time I think that I have it down to a science, where I think and I can predict exactly what the behavior would be based on what the person who's the victim, and based on his physical attributes and physical reactions to certain things and certain terms. And the terms I'm referring to are the questions that we direct to the victim, and the victim will react physically somehow. And at that point, you make a notation of that. So you're making a notation, you're profiling the actual behavior of a demon. And in in doing so, you have to make sure that you are spiritually protected, and based on your faith, will be based on how strong your shield will be. Because understand, you're in a battle, and the battle is between you and the demonic, you and the darkness. And darkness will try to keep itself hidden, and as a result, he will try to make sure that you will never see him, or you will not be able to reveal his presence based on what you see, and that's its main purpose. I always get very skeptical when an individual cries out or makes a request for our services, and they say that they have a demonic possession, and they feel the demon in them. And I get very skeptical, because I look at that individual, and then knowing the personality of various demons, I know for a fact that all the demon wants to do is he wants to hide himself in the darkest places of that person, and will not want to be revealed. Because if he's revealed, it's like him saying, well, here I am, exercise me. And he doesn't want that. He wants to stay where he's at so he can create as much damage as possible, create as much chaos to destroy that person from the inside out. So the last thing the demonic wants to do is make itself known. So the demonic investigator, as well as the demonic profiler, has to be right on the top of their game, because they're battling with supernatural elements that may be beyond their comprehension. But when you see something and you witness something, you have to take it for what it is and then work through it, no matter how terrifying it might appear to be. Okay, things that we don't fully understand become terrifying. And of course, that spirit of fear is also very contagious. The spirit of fear is one of the personalities of these demons. And if that be the case, you have to understand that you're very much open to that when you expose yourself and you're not fully prepared to face what's to come. If you were a soldier in a battle, believe me, if you didn't have a helmet and a rifle, and you were totally defenseless in that particular scenario, you would be no doubt destroyed. You would be shot. You would be killed. But if you have the proper battle assessment, like the helmet and the gear and the guns and all the other things, then the odds are you have a better chance of surviving. The same thing is true in this war, the spiritual war that we are encountering. When we encounter this war, we are placing ourselves in harm's way. And if you're going to place yourself in harm's way, you need to know that you're not going to be a victim. You need to know that you're going to survive, whatever the scenario is. You're going to survive it. And when you're in front, you're facing an individual who is going through demonic issues, especially demonic possession. You want to be on the top of your game. You want to make sure that you could read not only the room, but you could read the person. You could read everything that is going on, especially if it's a demonic personality that's trying to hide itself from your sight and from anyone else's sight, and wants to be hidden. And that's when you become the super detective, if you will, the detective for God. To become more than just a warrior, you have to be everything, because you're dealing with something that's totally and completely supernatural. So that's what you need to do. I'm going to scroll down and see if I have any questions here. I see a lot of greetings. And, okay, let's see. Okay. See a lot of people saying hi and hello back to you. Okay, here's an interesting question. Let's get back to it because it just went away for a second here. Do you need to be a Catholic, or is a Christian belief system okay? Well, I say that's a pretty good question. Reason being is, Satan and all his demons, they don't really care what church you belong to. They don't care what denomination you are. All they care about is how open you are to their presence and how willing you're able and blindly able to just simply let them in, just by base of suggestions. Could be by other means as well. When you act accordingly and you use negative behavior, it does leave you open. People that are intoxicated, for example, the alcohol itself doesn't care if you're male or female. Doesn't care if you're Catholic or Protestant. Doesn't care the color of your eyes. It just doesn't care. What the alcohol does, though, it makes once digested, there's a chemical reaction that takes place, and the person starts exhibiting other different behavioral things like staggering and maybe speech is impaired, things of this nature. It's all because of the interaction of the alcohol, the chemicals in the alcohol that interact with your bodily chemicals, so it reacts in a certain way. The question is, do you have to be Catholic? Or can an inner belief system, good, healthy belief system in Christianity be enough? I'm going to say that it doesn't make a difference as long as you believe and have Christian values and believe that Jesus Christ is Lord and Savior and believe that He is the Son of God. If you believe all that, then you're on the right track and you're taking your first step. And then, of course, building that belief system is following, not just in words, but in actions, and showing people that who you truly are. Personalities always seem to surface based on our actions. This is true for people who are possessed. People that have an oppression, that may be a little harder to identify, because what they have done, of course, subconsciously, what they have done is they've allowed the negative element into their mind, and as a result it has altered their personality to a certain extent, and where you start seeing things that they would normally do, their personality traits would change drastically from night to day, and as a result, you have to make an assessment based on that. If the person was at one time very social and becomes antisocial for some reason, and just he isolates himself from anyone and everyone and starts behaving oddly, the odds are there's something that's taken place in that individual. There's always a cause and effect, I say. Some people say, well, maybe he's had a mental breakdown. Well, that could happen. Maybe he has some kind of physical breakdown. That too could happen. But again, how did that person come to that state? How did they have all of a sudden a psychosis that develops? Some science may say, well, it's a progression of the cells, and as a result, there could be something happening within themselves. I always say that there has to be a causal effect. Something has placed that element in its path, and if it's negative, well, then you should be able to read that just based on their actions and how they behave and what they say and how they talk and so on and so on. So it's extremely important. So personality, we all have it. And as a result, people know us not so much by our names, but maybe by our physical attributes, maybe through our personalities. And so that really defines what a person is what they say, how they conduct themselves, and what's truly inside them comes out. It comes out naturally, which is really interesting. I'll read some more questions here. So hold on 1 second. Okay. How much is the cost? That's a good question. Okay, there's 6 classes altogether. You pay per class. So the first class is would be demonic profiling. You pay for that before you take the class. Obviously, everything's done by way of mail, email. It's $250 per class. So let's say you take the first level of this course, and the first level, of course, this first class would be demonic profiling, and you learn all the things that I talked about briefly, but in more detail, and along with some kind of illustration as to what this is about. The second class, of course, is all the classes are $250. So you have 6 classes. So you can do your math there. So you pay $250 for your first class. You complete your first class, you receive a certificate, and that's after we do a face-to-face evaluation as to whether or not you understand what the questions were, and then you understand your answers and so on. So we do a face-to-face exchange, if you will. Okay, once you do that, then you receive your certificate, okay, for the first class, which will be in demonic profiling. The second class is the assessment process. And this is an extremely important class because it's going to tell you everything that needs to be done from start to finish. And once you complete that class, we have the video face-to-face presentation, either on Skype or Facebook, and then at that point, we review your answers, and I try to get some type of clarity in regards to your full understanding of the questions. And then at that point, you're awarded a certificate for that level. Again, $250 per class, and you pay at the beginning of the class. The class is it's all self-paced. You do it anytime, and it's one of the advantages of online training, which is fantastic. And this will be equivalent to maybe a month in a classroom. You're learning it like right there, right in front. You have all the questions in front of you. You have the various things you need to do the research in order to get the answers. And once you do that, and again, your own pace, you could do the whole one lesson in a week. You could also do it in a month, or you could do it as many months. It's totally up to you. It's your own pace. And so what does this do? Once you have even just the first level as a demonic profiler, it allows you the ability to legally say that you've had some training in profiling, and as a result, this is what you've decided to do. You can join paranormal groups, you can join churches, you can join there's various church jurisdictions that would welcome not only a team leader or a lead investigator, but they'd welcome a demonic profiler. It's a new title, and it's displayed. You get a beautiful certificate, and you also get a registration. It's an authorization number stating that you are in fact a demonic profiler. And we keep all the records. You're assigned a number, and that number is yours, and it's on your certificate. So I think in essence, the question is, how much does it cost? $250 per class, and then when you complete each class, you get a certificate, and the certificate will be addressed as to the level of completion. As I said, there's demonic profiling, the assessment process, second one, pre-site interview, first contact interview, demonic investigation, and the assessment report. Assessment report would be the final report that you would give to the lead investigator or to the clergy, or to, if you're the clergy member and you have this, you'll have some reference points as to how you came to that conclusion that this demonic behavior is contributed because of, and then you'll have various listings, various notations, and at that point you can move on to whether it's a ritual or a further investigation. So extremely important. Okay, let's see, any more questions? And let's see here. Forgive me for the brief hesitation here because, as I said, this is a kind of a new venture for me. I've been on probably hundreds of podcasts, but I've never been on this side of the table, so it's a little different here. Let's see. Hello to everyone, by the way. Thank you for your greetings. Let's see. Okay, as I said, in terms of the actual classifications of spirits, demons, and so on, we are going to have to save that when you enroll in our class. The reason being is there's some information that cannot be said in this type of setting, because the demonic is listening, and we don't want to invite any thoughts into our own mind in regards to what we're talking about. Let's see. Okay. One second. Okay, that's interesting. Let's see. Okay, Gil, I have to disagree with you. The Bible does identify demons by name. They also and fallen angels by name. And unfortunately, we can't say them by name. But if anyone is versed and has read the scriptures, you would know that not only are they named, but also in the New and Old and New Testament, they are named. Their identities are named, and even their behaviors are demonstrated in the scriptures. And so, do they have to be Catholic? No. No. If you're referring to the individual who's the victim, no, he doesn't have to be Catholic. I know it's kind of silly, but the demon's not even Catholic. No one is Catholic. Catholic is a denomination. Protestant is a denomination. Religions are all man-made. Okay, you know that. At least some of you can accept that as fact. Others might have a problem with that, and if you do, I'm sorry. But the reality is that denominations were created by man. I like to think that they were inspired by God to man to create a belief system. But the denominations are truly... Now, in my particular religious affiliation, we have what's referred to as an apostolic succession, a line of apostolic succession, which means that we have a spiritual line going directly to Jesus Christ. And Jesus Christ laid his hands on his disciples, and disciples laid their hands on their disciples, and so on and so on and so on. That line of succession has gone over the centuries, and it has, well, I was consecrated a bishop. I had bishops place their hands on me. And there was a spiritual transmission that was taking place from one individual to another. And again, this is based on if you're willing to accept this as fact. But we believe this to be so. That transmissional spirit signal went from the bishop's hands to the person who is being consecrated to a bishop. And so we believe it leaves a spiritual tattoo, if you will. It'll always be there with you. And that means whenever the bishop wants to and feels that they need to elevate a priest to a bishop, they will do a ritual referred to as a consecration. And then the laying on of hands from Christ all the way to the bishop's hands, who is actually performing the consecration. That spiritual tattoo, if you will, is transferred to the new bishop, and then he has the authority to make other people, bring them into where they can receive holy orders and become a priest, or if they are elevated to bishop-elect and a bishop, then consecrated, and then at that point, that spiritual tattoo will stay with the new bishop. So it's all a spiritual thing. Now that's what we believe as Catholics. Okay. There's a lot of denominations that hold no water, or they don't hold any credence to the apostolic lines, as long as you're following Christ. And in the Scripture, it does say, if you follow in Christ, you're doing. A Christian means to be a follower of Christ. And sometimes people say they're Christians, but only God knows. And we're never in place to judge anyone, as far as I'm concerned. We take people at their word and by their actions, and that's all we can do. There's so many religions that are in the world today that you would not believe. And as a result, all these religions, they have their own way of expression and in terms of worshiping their God. And as a result, I'm not in the position, nor anyone else is in the position to criticize anyone's religion. I'm old enough to say that. I'm like 70 years old. I will be 70 in a few more months. So I'm old enough to say that religion is man-made, inspired by God. Again, that's open for debate. But it's still created by man. And it's man trying to reach God through all of his inner beliefs and what he was taught and what was passed down from generation to generation. I believe that God has bridged that gap by his Son. John 3:16. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish, but have everlasting life. That was the gift that was given to us, to bridge that gap. So when people start talking about denominational affiliations, I say, well, that's fine and good. Okay, I'm not going to discount it like I'll put it in the category of like the Girl Scouts or the Boy Scouts or the Explorers or any other organization. I will say that they were organized for the whole total purpose of worshiping God, and you can't criticize that. But in regards to putting my full credence on a denomination, I'll tell you that Satan doesn't care what religion you belong to, doesn't care what church you belong to, doesn't care in regards to any of those things that we hold value. At least we like to think we hold value to. So as a result, I hope I answered your question. No, you don't have to be Catholic to have a belief system. The belief system is totally up to you. And what you're willing to accept. We're exposed to so many things and so many ideas, and it gets more and more. Thank you, Bernie. Okay, let's see. Give me 1 second, guys, so I can read this and see. Oh, that's a good way of saying it, Carlos. Once the demon gives up its name, the party is over. I have to agree with you. Why is the name so important? I'll tell you. The name, it personalizes your battle with that one demon that's dominating the individual who's possessed. Okay, and it becomes a one-on-one battle because you identify that demon, and as such, the demon has already given up more than half of its power over that individual once he gives his name. Once his identity is actually said out loud, then the priest, minister, can actually perform a successful ritual. Now, understand too, and a lot of people may not know this, but when a person has, and understand, demonic possession is very rare, but if a person ever has, or falls into that category where they actually have a real demonic issue, something happens to that individual. Not only are they worn down, physically, and mentally shut, their mind is just shut. And sometimes, some people have suggested that they are aware of what's going on even when they're possessed. But I'll tell you that once the demonic is in an individual, and he's going to kind of make himself comfortable, It's going to want to stay there as long as it possibly can to create chaos in that person's life. To maybe even to a point where that person will just totally give up. See, the demon will not destroy you in regards to killing you, but the demon will make it logical for you to do that yourself. The demon will push you to the point, and you will give up and forfeit your life. And that's what the demon can do. The demon won't kill you, but he'll make it easy for you to kill yourself. And based on that, we're talking about some major danger things here. I was going to talk about possession. When a person is possessed by one demon, and let's say the exorcist is successful in terms of getting that demon out of the individual, that's wonderful. But there's a major horrible thing that could happen once that happens. That demon, according to Scripture, and this is in the Scriptures, okay, the demon will come out of that person, and that demon will wander, the Scripture says, in the desert for weeks, months at a time. And then it realizes that it's no longer in the house and where it came from, where it was evicted from. And so the demon will turn around and get other demons to join him. And they'll go right back to that house. Now, if that house is still clean, then the demon will stay away as well as the other demons. But if that house is back to where it started, where that individual welcomed demonic entities in their life, when they started doing a lot of negative behavior, where they put themselves at risk, and if they, after they've been exorcised, and they repeat that over again, or it's like their house is just like it, the house meaning their body, is it's just as messed up as it was in the very beginning, then the demons are going to come back. That person can be not only possessed once again by the same demon, but also could take a series of demons with them, a number of demons with them. And that person might have a multiple demonic situation going on within themselves, and the house becomes even worse condition, that is the body itself. And this happens when the victim is not willing to change their lifestyle. When the victim is not willing to put away those occult things and other things that may be considered communicating with the demonic and so on. They're not willing to do that, or willing to have a relationship with God on an ongoing basis, then something is going to happen in their life. If they don't change, then they're very much open for a repossession. And once that happens, they will become possessed once again, but now with more demons. So again, this is all scriptural, and it tells you that. No matter what your belief system is, you have to understand that in order to have good, you have to have evil. You have to have the opposite on the same playing field. And that's the balance. The balance of our reality is there's a positive and there's a negative. There's a good and there's an evil. And as a result, that has been from the beginning of time. You have to acknowledge that. And if you come to this presentation in regards to what we're offering online, then you have to know that that you have to believe these basic fundamentals. You have to believe that God does exist. If you believe God exists with all your heart, then you have to also believe that Satan exists and all the demonic entities that are in our world. You have to believe that as well. You can't believe one without the other. They both have to coexist within your belief system. You have to believe that there is a God. You have to believe that there's a Satan. You have to believe that there's lots of good in the world, and you have to believe there's lots of bad and evil in the world. They both exist. And if you have that honest, if you can make that honest statement within yourself and believe it, then your inner belief system will increase, and then you can add on to that. So I hope that answered at least one of your questions. I'm going to go down and see if there are any more questions here. It looks like we're just about approaching the first hour. We have one more hour, and that's based on participation of that's your participation. Give me some questions. I'll answer them to the best of my ability. And the only thing I can promise you is that I will be honest with you and I will tell you the truth. Because there is power. There's power in the truth. And when you have the truth and the light around you, then you're going to be pretty good. Okay. Okay, but okay, Ross, yes, you could say that. The $250, you could say it's a gift. Let me tell you what my situation is, and this is again coming straight to being honest with you and letting you know. Okay, I've been in the ministry of exorcism, and if you count my current activity, we're looking at about 42 years, a long time. In my 38 years, I've never asked anyone for a cent. All my rituals, and even today it's true, if I do a ritual of exorcism, it's going to be free. It's always been free. I've never asked for anything. Even when we had the Order of Exorcists in full motion for 40 years, we were accepting membership, and we were charging $65 just for our labor, and that's it. And that $65 was good for the whole year. And that was it. And you get a certificate, you get ongoing training. I would have weekly newsletters about cases, individuals asking for investigations, asking for an evaluation in their city, state, and country. And I would share it with all the members. And any member who has been part of the Order of Exorcists, you know that I've been doing this for many years. And I've always been sharing everything and all the requests and so on. And I put a lot of my time and effort because I'm in the business of being a servant of God, and I don't expect any payment. The payment I receive is just comes back to me in a supernatural form, okay, where I'm blessed. But I've never asked anyone for money. The $65 that was for membership for the Order of Exorcists. I don't do that anymore, but now I have a new thing where I'm giving out a lifetime membership in the Order of Exorcists, and then I'm asking for $100 for that. And all this money, okay, first of all, the Order of Exorcists is a 501c3. If you don't know what that is, it's a non-profit organization. Okay, and because it's a ministry, it's not a business. So as a result, that's fine. People give us donations, that's fine too. That was in the past. I don't really receive donations right now, except for my efforts in terms of putting this course out online and also offering lifetime membership in the Order of Exorcists. And if you're on Facebook, you can just look at my homepage or look at my forums. And I've mentioned that we're looking for ordained clergy. Don't have to be Catholic, but they have to be an ordained minister and a Christian ordained minister. And if they're willing to create an order of exorcism within their jurisdiction, within their ministry, then I'm more than happy to give them a certificate that states that they are doing just that. And I will identify, if they're a bishop, I identify them as an exorcist bishop. Now that means that this individual has taken upon himself to create an order of exorcism within his jurisdiction. That means that he has taken on responsibility of not only receive requests from individuals that have demonic issues, but also to follow through and have an investigation done. They would assemble their team of investigators, and their investigator, along with their demonic profiler, will go to the location and they will investigate. They'll start their assessment by doing the intake interview, first contact interview, and then the profiler will be there in hand, and he will be doing his thing. He'll be looking at the individual, looking for physical manifestations that may be questionable in regards to what is considered the norm, if you will, and then he would be making notes and making an assessment. Then once the first contact interview is done, along with the assessment by the demonic profiler, then they would do the walkthrough through the house. They would interview the individuals in the household, and then even before then, there's a process that's called a pre-site investigation. You do this before the first contact interview. So you look online, after you got the request, the person sends you their name and the contact information. You look online, and you're looking for the investigators looking for anything that may have been published in regards to this person, anything that the paper may have printed out, anything at all that's online will come out and come to surface. If there's nothing like that, then that's the first part of your investigation. You'll also do a property check and any property history as to whether or not there was what was there before the houses. Were there was it an empty field? Was it a cemetery? Was it some kind of worship place? Who knows? So the investigator would do the pre-site interview, and he'd work alongside of the lead investigator, and also the demonic profiler will also put his additional contributions in by doing his own research in regards to the house itself, looking for has there ever been any reports of, let's say, dark rituals that may have been done on the property or in the premises. And if that be the case, that could add on to the profile of what possibly could be taking place in that area, in that location. So all these things are extremely important. And so that's how all of this takes place. At the very end, of course, the assessment from the investigation team as well as from the demonic profiler will be submitted to the upper church jurisdictional structure, whoever that may be, or to the organization that they are doing this in behalf of, or ministry. And then at that point, they will also receive the psych evaluation and the health evaluation. Now, the victim has to be willing to submit these two things, and of course that may take some time for them to submit that to you as the investigating team. However, there are a lot of free clinics that would provide a psychological evaluation, at least a preliminary, as well as a physical, and it wouldn't cost them a cent. So we would insist on those two things, especially if the case is classified as a possibly demonic possession. Then we really need those two reports. Once the two reports come in, the assessment report and the investigation report, which is the assessment, and the profiler's, the demonic profiler's assessment as well. Once all of this comes in, then we have a psychiatrist. We used to have 3, but now we have 1. The reason being is because I retired a couple of years ago, semi-retired. Anyway, we have a psychiatrist who's a medical doctor who can also read the psychological reports as well as the physical exam, and then he would send that information, his recommendations, or he sees anything that's unusual or shouldn't be. He would make notations and give it to the clergy, the lead clergy, or the higher jurisdictional bishop. Will give that report to the bishop or the head of your church. They will make an evaluation based on not only what they read and see in the assessment reports from the investigators and the demonic profiler, but they will also review the psychological recommendations and the physical recommendations from the doctor. Once they do all that, then the bishop of the jurisdiction or the hierarchy of your religious organization would make a decision and use what we call discernment. Discernment is, it gives you the divine focus of what is real and what's not. It gives you truth. And once you use discernment, you also have this wonderful relationship with God, and that focuses you in regards to reviewing any reports that are sent to you. Once you have this in place, then you make a decision as to whether or not you authorize a ritual of exorcism. The ritual of exorcism is the last thing you do. It generally takes, after the assessment reports are reviewed and the doctor's recommendation comes in, it normally takes anywhere from 3 to 6 months in terms of time. Reason it takes so long is because we're counting on outside agencies to give their input, such as the doctors and also medical reports and psychological reports from other outside agencies. So we're waiting for that. So there's a big waiting game involved. Okay. Meantime, once you receive the green light and the jurisdictional bishop or the religious leader says, okay, it's time for a ritual, then the ritual is done. The one thing about my organization, and this is true for many years now, is that, and always will be true, is that we will never ever do an exorcism ritual unless we know beyond a shadow of a doubt that it's justified. Reason being is, if a person does truly have some form of chemical imbalance or some identified psychosis, and there's no demonic presence whatsoever, and we perform a ritual of exorcism, it could throw that individual further into their psychosis, and that could lead to suicide. And it has happened in the past, and we're not going to have that happen again to any of our teams. And we have clergy in 24 countries right now, and we're looking for more clergy who are willing to join us, at least at the, if not the seminary classes, at least the lifetime membership with the Order of Exorcists, which will be identified as the International Ministry of Exorcism. And it's cost $100 for the clergy. It's not open to the laity; it's only for clergy. But the seminary courses that we are offering for demonic profiling, that's open for the clergy and laity. So either one, you'd be accepted if you think and you feel like you have a calling to do just this. Okay, let's see if there's any more questions. We are coming close to where we're at right now. Let's see. Give me 1 second just to read this real quick. Okay, that's a good question from Gil. What causes a person to become demonically oppressed? And other issues here. Let me say this, okay? All of us are open targets. We have been from the time of birth into this planet. We are all targets. We're targets for all the good things in life and to receive all those wonderful things. We're also targets for negative, harmful things that could come into our lives, which can affect our mind, which could affect our body and our personality and so on. So the natural progression of life opens us up to everything. We are open as a vessel. They say that for everything that you observe and see, it records that event permanently and leaves a mark on the cortex of your brain. So if you were to do an autopsy, you'd see the brain. It would have all these lesions and wrinkles and so on. Each of them represent a memory. So, which is really interesting, actually. That means that everything that is flashed before you is being registered and being recorded and being stored in the subconscious parts of your mind, and which is really interesting. To have a demonic oppression comes when you do what you normally do as a human being. You want to learn. You want to see what's out there. You want to make yourself better, maybe more knowledgeable, in tune with things. And so you do research and you see that there's a possibility to learn something, and you go for it, especially if it's something you're really interested in. A lot of people are interested in becoming a better person, a better self. And if it means to be successful by using supernatural measures, like calling on the darkness and asking for some abilities, like whether it be successful in your career, or achieving large sums of money, or maybe being intuitive, maybe having the ability to read people, and of course these doesn't apply to people who take my course. But if you fall in a category and you want to open up, maybe you want to use some form of point of focus, such as a Ouija board. I've always said that there's no special powers in the Ouija board. However, the special powers comes from within the person. It comes from what's referred to as intent. The Ouija board makes it very easy to use it as an instrument to open that area where darkness can come in. And it could disguise itself as light. You know, it could disguise itself as a guardian angel or something like that. But in reality, it could be, as you know, Satan is a deceiver. All the demonic entities are deceiving, and in fact, that's their main tool of offense. You know, to get in there and to charge and fill you full of doubt and chaos, and that's what they want to do. So if a person starts experimenting with all these things that we refer to as occult material, Ouija boards, and there are other things too, crystals, a few other things. If you're willing to do all that, then you're really opening yourself up to all kinds of negative influences. We receive negative influences every day. When we listen or watch a program on TV, we hear some news reports on what's going on in current events. We listen to the radio, we listen to programs that talk about dark things. And as a result, any information like that is received and leaves a mark, as I said, in the vortex of your brain. It stays with you till the end of your life on this earth. So that means you have all this negative thing and energy that comes in because you're just listening. You're viewing. Your brain is registering and recording everything you see. And as a result, things start happening. You have enough negative input, it becomes a major problem. It can alter your personality, alter various things and how you perceive life. Your value systems could go down. A multitude of things could happen. And it's all just because of being alive and being aware of what's going on in the universe. We read in Genesis, Adam and Eve, and the tree of knowledge and the apple and the whole scenario. It's part of human nature to challenge whatever we see, and especially when we're told not to do it. You're told not to do something, you're going to do it. It's just like part of who we are. Maybe it's part of our sinful nature. Whatever it is, when it becomes an obsession, and which can go into all kinds of horrible things, such as addiction, you can not only destroy yourself, your brain, your body, but all the other things that are all tied into who you are. So, in regards to who is a target for demonic influence or demonic attacks, I have to say everyone. The ones who are your church leaders, the ones that you look up to, the ones that you know are religious and very much blessed, those are the people that are more of a target to Satan. Think about it, like using the military terms. If you take out the generals in these armies, the military, the soldiers, that is, the subordinates, would be lost without a leader, or they would not be as effective. And then there's another cliche: if you chop the head off a snake, okay, that could eliminate your problem or threat with the snake. This all falls in the same category. We are a living representation of God Himself. God has created us in His image. And as a result, we are a threat to every demonic force that roams our universe. And we become walking targets. And the more important you are in God's army, the more of a target you're going to be. If you take in at least half of what I'm telling you, you are more likely to become more of a target than you were prior to this presentation. That's just the truth of the matter. the war that we happen to be in is real, and people are dying, at least spiritually, and some of us are living like living zombies. Okay, because we have no choice, because we're being manipulated by the negative forces of the world, and as a result, this is exactly what we have to be aware of. I'm going to zoom down to some more questions here, because this can get a little interesting, I think. Let's see what we're doing here. Let's see. Carlos, I'm happy to hear that. I have at least a half a dozen St. Michael's statues on my work desk, and it's a reminder that we are fighting with the Archangel in this battle, and it's very, very real. Let's see what else we have here. Okay, here we go. Let me say this, okay, and this is true, Ross, and anyone else that has a similar question. We're placed in this world for a reason. I believe, my personal belief is, we all have a mission in life. Some of us are to listen and be enlightened by the good things that God wants us to reveal to us. And some of us were chosen to be foot soldiers, warriors, if you will. The question is, I need to have you witness a real exorcism? If that was to happen, it wouldn't be my decision. That would be our Creator. I believe God has, He's empowered to make anything and everything possible. If that's His will, that you see a genuine demonic possession face to face, then so be it. That would be His will. In my opinion, I believe that God allows us to be educated in the tools that we need. Knowledge is a very important tool. Know the prayers, have the faith intact. All these things can be developed with practice. I wouldn't recommend anyone to just walk into a room that's and there's a real exorcism going on, where the individual is displaying all kinds of unexplainable movements and things are happening in the room. I wouldn't recommend that to anyone. Okay, as I said, I've had experienced paranormal investigators that have joined our teams and have seen an exorcism at up close and personal for the very first time, and they ran out of the room. They were terrified, and no doubt they were traumatized for the rest of their lives because of what they see. Just because you think you have a lot of experience in investigating, especially paranormal investigating, and you believe you're a good religious person, that may not be enough to be confronted with something that could terrify the average clergyman. Heck, it happens. After so many rituals I have done in the past, I could still tell you that every ritual is totally, the outcome is totally and always, there's a similarity, but they're always different. There's a similarity in regards to if you're successful or not. We have some cases that we were not successful, and the victim winded up in being committed. Some victims wind up committing suicide. Some victims are unbelievable and unspeakable things could happen to them within their life as a result of us not being successful in actually performing an exorcism that was effective. I always tell all our clergy, make sure you have a calling to do this ministry. Not every minister is called to do this ministry. If you are not called to do this ministry, and you're a minister, and you go and you do your ministry of exorcism or deliverance, you may not be as effective as if you were a person who is called to do this. I was never called to be a mechanic. I was never called to be a electrician or a carpenter. I was never called to be a lot of things. But I believe I was called to do this. And this is what I do. So, any tuitions that you pay, or anything that you pay in terms of membership fees, anything like that, you could look at them as donations. I look at them as an extra income source so I can buy groceries. Sounds kind of pathetic, right? No. Seriously, it's to pay my bills. Okay, I put a lot of work into what I do, and I do it willingly because this is what I'm called to do. But anything extra, like, not only my time, but also the printed materials, the study materials I put together, they all cost me financially, and so I get some type of financial relief by the tuitions and the membership fees and so on. I never got rich off anything. I'm not rich now. I'm just a humble servant of God. And I'll continue to do this as long as I live, I suppose. There's no way I could retire. I tried to retire about 4 or 5 years ago. I tried to retire. It wasn't happening. So here I am, once again. The Order of Exorcists is still exists, especially in the ministries of our clergy. They have their own. They're autonomous from us, but they're affiliated with us. And as a result, they have their own jurisdiction where they conduct their ministry of exorcism, which I think is absolutely wonderful. They use all our methods, they use our procedures, and they're effective in their ministry. The main reason is not because of my material, but because they were called to do this. So I say God bless them, and I pray that all of you will keep them in their prayers. There's a lot of them that are on the internet, on Facebook, that are tied into my forums and so on. I'm going to go down again and look at the questions here. Do you have any more questions here? Remember, being an expert in a field doesn't really mean you're an expert. You just have come to a point in life where you've gathered as much information, gathered as much experience as you possibly can. And as a result, your expertise only goes to the limit of your understanding, the limit of your knowledge, and your perception in what you understand to be true. And that's the only expert that you become. No one comes as the master expert. And the only one like that, I believe, is Jesus Christ. He's the master, but I'm just a humble servant. Okay, my understanding is that demons can't possess without being somehow invited by the victim. Okay, I'm going to say, I want to really respond to this because this is really interesting. Some people think that you have to always invite the demonic entity into your body or into your space in order for them to affect who you are and your very existence. The truth of the matter is that there have been, and there are things called curses. There have been generational curses that have taken place, that has been passed down from one generation to another, as horrible as that sounds. That's a real thing that actually exists. There's also other things in the element. Our mind is constantly taking information, input. Okay, subliminally, we are actually taking all the messages that we don't quite understand, but our brain is absorbing that information, and as it does, it's becoming part of the collective of your mind. Subliminal messages have been used in music, has been used in commercials, have been used in even movies. There are a lot of things that we may not fully be aware of, but they do exist. Subliminal messaging is a real thing. I mean, it's a real thing. And as a result, you start taking enough negative information, you may be, believe it or not, sliding into that behavior where you're actually not only welcoming the darkness, but trying to find out more about the darkness. And as a result, it's all not because of your intent, but because of your not being aware that the subliminal messaging is actually being filtered and being recorded in your mind. Again, this is a real thing. So, yeah, in most cases, I would say, generally speaking, you have to invite the entity, the demonic forces into your mind and into your space. And, that's true for demonic infestation. A person may have a seance or something to that effect. It becomes very dark. The seance and the outcome becomes very dark. And then in that immediate space, demonic entities can decide to take residence in that room or house. And then you have what's referred to as a demonic infestation. Being exposed to that element also exposes you to the demonic oppression and then even demonic possession. There are many stages, and it doesn't happen all at once. It could be a gradual thing, and then before you know it, you're in a situation where you're lost, and you don't know where to go or who to turn to. I still, and even though I still claim to be retired now, which it's kind of a joke at this point. I still get requests from people asking for help in their demonic situation. There's like certain things I could do. I could make referrals to people that I know that may live in your city, state, or country. But even then, it's very time consuming because I get a lot of those requests. But when I do, I mention them on my forum, and then of course I have individuals who were my clergy, are still clergy, of course, but they have their own ministries, and they could take on the information that I should pass through my forums, and once that happens, then they could contact the individual making the request for help, or they could go to my website www.orderofexorcists.com, and we have an open referral directory which I had published a couple of years ago. You'll see names of individuals who are clergy and also are investigators, and they are scattered throughout the world. They're in certain cities and so on. And you can contact them. There's a phone number, contact information. You can contact them directly if you need help in regards to demonic issues. My involvement at this point is just simply to advise clergy members, and I mentor a lot of bishops and church leaders in regards to how to conduct their ministry of exorcism and what to look for. The online courses were designed solely for the clergy and for lead investigators, but it's basically open to anyone who is willing to learn the area of being a demonic profiler. And as for worldwide recognition and being affiliated to our organization, it would cost a clergyman $100 and the willingness to start or build on to their existing ministry of exorcism. Okay, I'm going to go down. I think I've did enough promotions on that. Let me see anything else we have here. Hold on, guys. I promise you that my next meeting on this, I will be more equipped and more organized, so you won't have to hold on for any length of time as I fumble through some of this stuff. Thank you, Joshua. God bless you too. Okay. Carlos says a layman should never lay hands on a person as they pray over them. That's because there will be a transformation of any evil spirits to the person who is laying hands on them. Okay, I have a couple of things to say on this subject. Again, just my opinion, whatever that may mean. When you pray,
it's not necessary that you make physical contact. But I also, at the same token, I don't see any harm in holding hands while praying, touching one's shoulder, or putting your arm around an individual who needs prayer. I see nothing wrong with that, actually. If we're talking about an individual who's a layperson who takes on such using sacramental and wants to do an exorcism, I would caution them. I would not recommend that they do that. It leaves them open to all the negative things that's in that person. Evil entities can actually be transferred from the victim to the layperson who's trying to be helpful. This is also true for clergy that have not received any training per se, and understand. I use what's called the Roman ritual, and it's a series of prayers, okay, and it's said in a repetitious fashion until the demonic entity becomes tired, and then he decides to surrender by giving its name. That's great. But I want you to understand that the words in the Roman ritual, there is no power in those words. The power is behind the words, and behind the words are the power of God. So when God has the power and uses those words to articulate what is being taken place at that particular time, then that's the real power. A lady that picks up the Roman ritual and tries reading it and so on is not going to be very effective. In fact, to the contrary, because of their level of belief, faith, and acceptance, they could actually be in an area of danger, falling into danger by being possessed themselves. So it's something to think about. Yeah. Okay, now I'm going down here, and let's see what else we have. Okay, Sophie, let's see. I'm reading yours right now. It says, are the new seminaries going to be related for the case investigations? SOSM members since 2014. Okay, I will tell you, I will try to answer that. And I'm just trying to understand the question. Give me 1 second here. Okay, I will tell you this in regards to some of the seminaries, other schools of instruction in regards to this subject matter. Investigations, it's a well-known, in fact, I believe that it's part of the process that they understand that they must have some kind of calling to do this. And the training should be there. They should have what's called a mentor, who is a spiritual director that will take their hand basically and walk them through the process, walking them through the stages of becoming an exorcist. My start was back in the early mid-70s, and as a result, when I received holy orders, which is the ordination into the priesthood, I was assigned to a mentor who was a man much older than me, and was like, I was in my mid-20s. He was probably close to 70, and he was an experienced exorcist, has been for many years, and as a result, he accepted me, and I was his assistant for 4 years.
So I had 4 years on the job training before I was appointed an exorcist within that jurisdiction. That was 4 years of training. I was just his assistant. The assistant priest, I would read, okay, the responses that come from as part of the ritual, and as a result, it was a long 4 years. But then after that, then things started to happen, and then because people started to ask for spiritual guidance, and not only that, but to have someone from the church send a priest because of strange things that were happening in their home, and some strange behavior with their children or spouses and so on. And so we got into that. We started having a counseling center, and then we were making referrals like crazy and doing visitations and house blessings, and then we started coming into the ministry of exorcism, and word of mouth. Before you know it, we had everyone contacting us. People who were way out of our jurisdiction, people who were out of state, out of country. And back in '82, I was consecrated in '82. I took upon myself to create an organization called the Order of Exorcists, and I created what I view as clinical personality questions that should be asked when doing an assessment on an individual who claims to have symptoms of demonic possession or demonic issues, whatever the case is. So I created this questionnaire, very close to a clinical evaluation in regards to where the individual is coming from, what he's experiencing, whether or not his request seemed to be legitimate, and so on. And then with that, I suggested we have a medical team to be present, which we've always had a nurse being part of of many of my teams. There's a nurse. I have some clergy that are actually doctors. We have a lot of very spirit-filled individuals who have taken leadership roles, and as a result, they become very effective in what they do. But as it stands now, I have to get right back to the pitch I said earlier. We need more clergy who are willing to take on the ministry of exorcism. And if they have an existing ministry, God bless them. But if they're willing to take on, a lot of ministries will not call or make available their services to assess a parishioner's problem in regards to this type of taboo spiritual existence, the demonic, if you will. There's too many people that are out there that are just pretenders, and they create their own situation based on a psychological profile. There could be many reasons. We, on the other side of the table, we have to look at each case and make an assessment and make sure that it's not just the opinion of one individual, but the opinion of many collectively, as well as the medical community. And once we have, everyone has elaborated in regards to their profession into this one assessment, then we could, the church heads could make that decision. And as I said, unfortunately, there are many. I mean, I'm still getting requests from so many people for an exorcism, and it doesn't work that way. The way it works is we have to do an assessment first. We can't just do an exorcism. We have to do an assessment. Anyone who does an exorcism, like right off the bat, at a drop of a hat, they're risking not only the victim but themselves, and they're opening up themselves to a whole lot of negative. The victim itself is a psychosis and not demonic related. It could lead to suicide, and then it becomes a demonic oppression from that point on. I'm still on the fence in regards to mental illness and demonic oppression. The reason I'm on the fence is there is no definitive answer in regards to what created the condition of being oppressed or having a chemical imbalance, or how does one fall into any of these categories. And it's all based on education, educational input or educational guesstimates in regards to what it possibly could be. Everybody has a hypothesis. So the hypothesis, it could go either way, and it just depends on the person who's giving the hypothesis. Right now we know one thing. We know for sure, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that there is evil. Evil does exist in our world. We know beyond a shadow of a doubt that evil affects the human condition. And as a result, there is demonic oppression and demonic possession. It does happen. As a result, we are an organization that will fight on behalf of the innocent, and we try to do it with the tools we have. The only thing I offer in my program is my experience, years of knowledge, and years of putting things together that are helpful instruments to able to not only do an effective assessment in a general investigation, but also to do a profile in regards to what is actually happening with the victim. So I think our program is very effective. It's affordable, at least to some, I hope, to many. $250 per class, and you get a certificate at the end. It's not too outrageous, and you can do all 6 classes again individually, and you can become a fully bona fide demonic profiler. And you'd have a certificate that will give you an authority number, a number that is that verifies what you are and what you do as a profiler. So that's the program we have to offer. And I see that we have like maybe another 15 minutes, less than 15 minutes. So I'm going to go down to more questions if there are any more. And I thank you all for being here and giving me the opportunity to present what I'm doing. I'm sure a lot of you have wondered if this guy behind the name is actually a real person, and I truly am. Let me see what I have here. Let's see. I'm reading the text, by the way, as we're doing this. Let's see. Okay, Ross wants to know if I would allow him to observe an exorcism. I'm going to say anyone who allows you into a room, a ritual room, for the sole purpose of just witnessing what's taking place, will probably not be welcome very much. Hold on, Rose. Let me read the rest of your stuff here. God, tell me about. Yes, it's very true about the abused children. Okay, so let me get back here. The main reason why a person would not openly be invited to a room, the only exceptions would be, of course, is if you're part of the investigation team, or if you are a medical professional who wants to be there, just in case something happens medically to the person, that they can be there and give them aid, or if they are a relative of the victim, or you're somehow in the household and you're close to the family. That's probably be the only exceptions that you would be able to view an exorcism ritual. The confidentiality is so high on this because when a person is going through this period, they are suffering physically. They're doing things that are unspeakable and would not want their name or image to go out anywhere, publicly, that is, because they would be shamed, they would be, classified as as whatever. The point is, confidentiality is something that we have to respect. In fact, even before we do the first contact interview, we have the victim or the victim's family sign our disclosure, which states that everything that we verify, everything that we experience, see, and report will be confidential and not disclosed to anyone. It's probably a good reason why you don't see an actual traditional exorcism done and captured on some kind of documentary. You'll see maybe bits and pieces of some, but you won't see anything that would be like eye-opening, if you will. Everything is confidential, and I'm sure you can understand why. Just to think, to be totally open yourself to being humiliated because you look funny, you look disfigured somehow, or you're doing something that would be hideous or disgusting even. I won't go into the graphics of that, but you use your imagination. They wouldn't want that to go out. Of course, there's a confidentiality. When a person has when they become part of this whole scenario where they become a victim of the demonic and of the darkness, a lot of things are revealed. And God willing, everything and their experiences will always be behind closed doors and not be open to a stage or be open to the silver screen or anything. Stuff is very real, very confidential. I see I'm approaching my 2-hour thing, so I'm going to probably be closing pretty soon. Let me just check for any more questions here. And hold on 1 second, let's see. Okay, I have to say this, it's very important for me to acknowledge the clergy that are texting me at this point. As you know, as clergy, I feel I fall in the category of being a humble servant of God. Anything that I do and anything that I have done in the ministry has been for the glory of God. I'm not perfect, far from it. In fact, I am a sinner. And I'm only trying to be the vessel that God wants me to be. So I thank you for your praises, but it's totally unnecessary. The glory goes to God. And, okay, now let's see, I'll go down here. This makes sense. Okay, yes, they do. Okay, I'm reading something from Carlos. Okay, I gotta tell you, I love these questions because they demonstrate not only intelligence but also some knowledge in this area, the area that we are talking about. In regards to an untrained laity that prays over people or priests can lay hands on someone because of his office. I have to tell you, if you remember in the very beginning, I talked about denominations. Okay, and denominations are all based on man's reconstruction of how the church fathers feel they should worship God, the most effective way, the most effective method. Okay, so I'm going to tell you that the denominations, Christian denominations especially, they're all formed because they want to worship God the best way and how they feel they're led in the Spirit to worship God. That's fantastic. But understand that the whole construct of the actual denomination was man-made. May have been inspired by God, but all man-made. The only thing that was God actually put his finger and wrote certain portions of what we believe to be from God is when Moses came down from the mountain and he was holding the tablets and he had the 10 Commandments. That was written in the hand of God. That is the only thing that God has written. Everything else has been spiritually transmitted to believers. They were inspired even to write the scriptures. There's 66 books in the Bible, okay? And of course there's quite a few more Gospels that have not been included, which some of us know. All of these things have been inspired, not by man, but by God. So, as a result, God did not put together a denomination and say, this is the denomination, okay? We believe, of course, that there's only one God, one church. And of course, the church that I'm referring to, of course, is the church that believes that Jesus Christ is Lord, and believe John 14:6, where Jesus said, "I come," and he said, "Whoever comes to the Father comes by me." I am so happy to say to you that I'm blessed to be part of this whole ministry until the day I die. I thank you all for listening. I hope you're able to bring some facts to your understanding in regards to the subject matter. If you're interested, there's a link to the seminary program, and you can go to that. And if you want to contact me directly, I believe that's also written somewhere. But my email is chief.exorcist.archbishop@gmail.com. And if you have any questions or anything that I missed, or maybe you want to discuss, just send me an email, and I'll do my best to get back to you as soon as I possibly can. I guess that's all I'm going to say. I wanted to just close this session by saying the St. Michael's Prayer again, because this is a defensive prayer. This is a prayer of protection, and this is a prayer that we should know. And if you're not familiar with it, go online and print out the prayer and commit it to memory. When you do this, it will help you and will protect you. And do it. Pray this prayer day and night if you can. Here's the prayer. Saint Michael the Archangel, defend us in battle. Be our defense against the wickedness and snares of the devil. May God rebuke him, we humbly pray. And do thou, O Prince of heavenly hosts, by the power of God, thrust into hell Satan and the other evil spirits who prowl about the world for the ruins of souls. Amen. Take care, my friends. Thank you for joining.